Welcome to GCISD Parent Education Night. Tonight, I guess I'll introduce myself. My name is Emberly Hill. I'm the Director of Counseling for the district. Thank you for being here. We really do appreciate your attendance. We try to have a variety of parent education programs on a variety of topics, and so it's always good to see faces in the audience. Hopefully we're meeting your needs. Tonight we have Dr. Livingston who's going to talk to us about how to have a talk with our kids. So Dr. Livingston, welcome.
Sure. So I get a call, hey, Dr. Livingston, can you come talk to all of your children's friends, parents, school teachers, and talk to all of them about sex? And I thought to myself, what could possibly go wrong? And I went to the shack meeting. Back here for round 2. So I know coming in tonight, for all of you, there's different feelings about what I'm going to talk about. Some of you are excited about this, some of you are curious about this, some of you are already mad at me, and I haven't even really started talking yet. And that's okay. The room divides into the people that like you and the people that hate you. So before I start, could I just find out which side actually likes me? Okay, as long as we're clear. I think you're going to have fun with this talk. What I ask you to do is, whatever your beliefs are and whatever your preconceived notions are, kind of let that go. Just let that go. Kick back, relax, enjoy the flight. Nothing's going to happen. No one's going to be embarrassed. You're not going to do anything. But it's a chance to learn. And it's a chance just to open your mind to some different ideas and different ways of thinking about things. If all of you leave with one idea that you can put into practice as we try to raise our children and put that in play tomorrow, then I will feel successful. I only need everybody to find one thing they like. I'm going to move over here because I can't see the screen. So I'm going to move over. So let's start with this. How did you learn about sex when you were a kid? So think back to, we won't do a raising hands, we'll just think in your head. So think back to those awkward years of 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. Kids are talking about stuff in the locker room. You see something come through on TV. Maybe you looked at the JCPenney catalogs that came through, or if you were lucky, you found a copy of the Sports Illustrated Swimsuit Edition. If you were a nerd like me, you went to the encyclopedias and looked things up. But you found ways to get the answers to the questions that were in your head. You all did. We all did. You ask a friend, you ask a sister, you ask somebody else, but you filled the void. You had a question about sex, you got an answer. So what do our kids do now? Well, this. Our kids have their iPad out while they're watching Netflix on TV, while they're playing on video games, texting someone, and listening to music all at the same time. Information is everywhere. It's information overload. If your kid has a question, they're curious about sex, they have a way immediately to get an answer. So what do we do with that as parents? I'm going to guide you through some tips on that. The key, though, is how do we approach this problem? The problem being kids do have questions about sex. They want to know, and they're going to find out. As parents, this is often our approach. This is not the approach of you tonight. You are here. You have already pulled your head out. You are here, and I thank you for that. And I thank you for giving me the time and just being open and being vulnerable and listening and seeing what we can do. So this is the message that most kids get from their parents about sex. Don't do it. Rule number 2, follow rule number 1. Follow rule number 3. Follow rule number 4. I think it's important that you communicate to your kids what your family believes about sex. I'm not going to tell you what that should be. That's up to you. It's important that you communicate that. But that can't be it. We can't stop there. When we poll kids, and this doesn't matter anywhere in the country, we say, what's the thing that you wished you were taught more about in school? They say information about sexuality is something they're missing, and they wish they had more. Your kids are asking you to help them through this journey, and sometimes we don't listen. All right, so what are my goals for tonight? What am I going to tell you? I'm going to give you just some basic background information about teen sexual behavior. This is stats, this is numbers, this is sort of what's going on in the world around us. Then we're going to cover very, very, very basics about STDs. Now, I travel around, I give lectures about this. The STD talk is an hour just in of itself. We're going to cover it in 5 minutes. Okay? Then we're going to do birth control basics. That also is an hour-long lecture. We're going to do that in about 6 minutes. Okay? And then we're going to get to the end, which is just some tips and tricks that I use as a parent and that I use in the office on how to talk about really difficult things with young children and with teenagers. And hopefully you can take some of those and put them into practice. So this is my little boy. This is his doctor in training, equipped with mom's purse and dad's stethoscope. So it's around 6th grade, and I had heard him and his friends talking a little bit about something that seemed a little bit sexual, and I talked to my wife, who's here tonight, thank you for coming, and said, you know, Max and I are going to have the talk. So we sat down at the dinner table, and I taught him the birds and the bees, and I had a video that I had already checked out, made sure it was age appropriate. We watched that together. He asked a few questions, and at the end I said this. I said, Max, look, I do this for a living. You can ask me anything. Nothing's embarrassing. I talk about this stuff all day. Anything you want to know, just come and ask me. But Max, I don't want you to share this with your friends. All of your friends deserve to learn this from their parents. So if you want to talk about it, come talk to me. But the things we learned tonight, that stays between us. We don't share that with friends. And he looked at me and he said, Dad, you don't have to worry, because I never want to talk about this again. All right. How do kids learn about sex? A little bit in school. Okay, they get some in health class. They learn from their friends. They ask questions, their friends talk about stuff, they learn that way. They may learn from you. And after tonight's event, most of your children are probably going to get a talk tomorrow. Your kids will learn a lot. Kids learn a ton from the internet. And we're going to talk about that towards the end of the talk. And they learn from other media. TV shows, things that are on everywhere. The question, though, is really what influences their decisions? And this is really interesting, because this crosses socioeconomic bounds, it crosses all racial barriers. You. So the number one influence on what a child believes and ultimately is going to do about sexuality actually comes from you. It's good to know we still matter, because sometimes it doesn't feel that way, but you do. All right. Here's my kind of first thought-provoking thing. And by the way, I'm not going to tell anyone tonight what you should say or what you should believe. I'm not going to do that. But I am going to give you some things that challenge that and help you think through it. So I just want you to look at this. The average age of the first sexual encounter, 16 and a half. The average age for marriage is 29 and a half. That's a long time if the only communication we've had is, I want you to wait until marriage. Nothing wrong with that. If that's what your family believes, there's nothing wrong with saying, I want you to wait until marriage. But as your kid ages and they're 27, that answer may not be enough. They may have needed more guidance from you on how to handle things as their life progresses. You are their model. So your children, from the time they're born, they watch everything you do. And they're learning about sex from you all day, every day, even when you think they're not watching. They watch what happens when one of you comes home from work and the other is there. How did you greet each other? How did you say hi? What happened in a movie when there was a romantic moment? How did you react? When mom and dad are talking about other people and their relationships, they're listening. You are their model. And if you think about our job as a parent, we're raising our children to leave our house. That is ultimately our job. We're raising our children so that hopefully one day they can leave and survive in the world on their own, because you are their mom. All right, so this part of the talk, this gets a little bit of some nerdy background data stuff, and I think that's really important because if we're going to cover the next issues, we've got to understand what's going on in the world and what kids are actually doing. So I know some of this is going to make you a little bit uncomfortable, I get that. But it's important to know, and this is data tracked by the CDC. It's called the Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance Survey. Anytime I'm putting together a talk, this is the resource that I use. And by the way, if any of you have insomnia, read some of this and you'll sleep really well. Any issue that you're interested in, they're tracking it. So if you wanted to know what % of sophomore kids in 76034 text while driving, they have that data. If you want to look at the number of kids who were injured in trampoline accidents, they have that data. So this looks at children and then accidents and dangerous behavior. So for me, I use this to pull information about sexuality. All right, so where are we going to highlight? My pointer may work. All right, let's look at age 13. By the way, real quick, before I do that, how many of you have elementary school kids? Cool. How many have junior high kids? Cool. And how many have high school kids? Awesome. How many have all of them? Yeah, we're there. All right. So this is really, really key. So we're going to look at before age 13. So before age 13, only 3.5% of kids have had sex. Slightly more boys than girls. It's good. It's a low number. But look what happens at 9th grade. Huge jump. Okay? We jumped to 20%. And by 12th grade, we're at a little bit over half. All right? Huge jump in that 13-year-old range. Really interesting, if you look at the boys and the girls, you start out where the girls are quite a bit less active than the boys, but by the time you finish high school, they've kind of caught up. All right. The Center for Disease Control says you have engaged in high-risk sexual behavior if you have 3 partners in your lifetime. Okay? I know some of you are like, uh-oh. The CDC tracks how many students have had 4 or more throughout high school, and you can see that by 12th grade, we're already at 25%. Now this is really interesting. I think students that are in 12th grade that have already had 4 or more partners, they don't think of themselves as promiscuous in a lot of cases. They would say, no, I only date one person at a time. Okay? 8th grade is the pivotal year. The fork is in the road. This is the moment. We went from 3.5 to 20% between 8th and 9th grade. This is the important year. I talked about this at the SHAC meeting when we're talking about school policy. This needs to deal with elementary, 6th, and 7th grade. By 8th grade, things are changing dramatically. I had a few minutes before most of you arrived. I got to chat with Charles. He has children that are in elementary school. We were talking about this. It's really important in that elementary school age group that you are laying the foundation. Because by 13, what they believe about sex, it's already in their head. Your chance to intervene and make changes, it's passing by. All right, so let's talk a little bit about sexually transmitted disease. This is an hour-long lecture condensed into 5 minutes. All right. So here's the scary stats to start it off with. And I don't put this up as a scare tactic. I just want to set the tone. It's important for you to understand this is real. This is what I do every day. All right. 2 of my partners just arrived, Dr. Arguello and Dr. Ignano. OB-GYN's also with me. And they will nod their heads in agreement when I go through these stats because this is what they do all day, every day. So 3 million STDs in teenagers in the United States. 1 out of 4 teenagers, by the time they graduate high school, they will have at least 1 STD. 1 out of 5 high school kids, by the time they graduate, they will have the herpes 2 virus. And for any of the scientists in the room, what I'm referring to is HSV2 IgG positive. 80% of women will be HPV at some point in their lifetime. 1 million teenagers will have gonorrhea, chlamydia, or syphilis. Half of new HIV cases are in people under age 25. And the one that really hits me is every hour in the United States, 2 teenagers are diagnosed with HIV. So let's put that into perspective. I started at 6 o'clock. I'm going to be done at 7 o'clock-ish. 2 teenagers are now HIV positive from the time I start this talk till the time I finish, and that happens every hour in the United States. This stuff is real. It may make you uncomfortable, but it's real. All right, here are the categories. So STDs can be divided into categories. I see some of you taking notes. Don't take it on this slide, take it on the next one. STDs are bacterial, viral, and parasites. Under the bacterial diseases, we have gonorrhea, chlamydia, and syphilis. Under viral, we have herpes, HPV, hepatitis, molluscum, and Zika. And under parasites, we have trichomoniasis, pubic lice, and scabies. All right, you're probably not going to remember that unless you're going into OBGYN or family medicine. Here's what I want you to know. You don't have to remember that chart. You really need to only know this. There are 2 ways that STDs are passed. Some are passed by fluid transmitting from one person to the other. The other set of infections are passed by touching, by skin-to-skin contact. Okay? So what do I mean by that? Kids, when I have them in the office or when I'm doing presentations, kids will always ask me, could you catch an STD if you did fill in the blank, blah, blah, blah. Okay? The answer is very easy. If fluid transmitted from one person to the other, with whatever you're thinking in your head, then the answer is yes. If there was fluid transmission, those diseases can be passed. If there's skin-to-skin contact, then those diseases can be passed. Okay? I'm going to digress to opinion for one quick second. Please indulge me 1 minute of opinionated fact. I did not like in the Student Health Advisory Council meeting that we attended when one of the other speakers made a reference to condoms not being effective against STDs. That's a very misleading statement. And if you just understood this one slide, then you can understand what the truth is. You can also understand where they were spinning the truth a little bit. Okay? If someone puts a condom on, that very effectively prevents fluid transmission. Gonorrhea, chlamydia, HIV, and trichomonas, condoms very, very effective because fluid is not transmitted from one person to the other. Now, do condoms help against the others where there's skin-to-skin contact? This is where the trick was. The answer is yes. Condoms do help against those 2 in the area covered by the condom. Okay? At the base of the penis or surrounding on the vagina where there's skin-to-skin contact not touching the condom, yes, skin-to-skin contact occurred, those diseases can be passed. But very misleading to say that condoms weren't useful. Does that make sense? At the end we'll do question and answer, and if you have questions about that we can move back. I'm only going to cover 2 in a little bit more detail. Chlamydia is the most common bacterial STD. We literally see a couple of cases of this every single week in our office. This is very, very common. It's the most common bacterial. It is only acquired through sexual contact. Remember, it is in the fluid transmitted category. So when people said, could I have gotten this from a toilet seat? Your answer is?
No.
No, unless you were doing something very interesting on the toilet seat. No. Okay? Could you get this from sharing towels or wearing someone's underwear? That question comes up for reasons I'm not sure. No. And also, don't wear other people's underwear. Ejaculation is not required. You cannot transmit any of those through casual contact. It is treatable. If you have chlamydia, we can help you. We give you antibiotics. You are cured. We need to hunt down the path and find all of the other partners. Chlamydia can be cured. Let's move on to the most common STD of all. And so when a lot of times in the office, when I diagnose someone with an STD, they will make a statement, I never thought this could happen to me. Okay? Statistically, with HPV, 70 to 80% are going to be positive in their lifetime. So when they say, I never thought this could happen to me, I think in my head, I did. Y'all were slow. You caught up eventually. Yeah, but if you have an infection that 70 to 80% are going to have, statistically, you got to take that seriously. That's the real deal. So how does HPV work? It's a skin transmitted. It's essentially everywhere. It's the most common STD of all. It is a viral STD. It's the cause of genital warts in men and women. HPV is the reason all the women in the room are recommended to have a pap smear. What we're looking for is precancerous changes in your cervix. If undetected, it can progress to cervical cancer. It can also progress to penile cancer, anal cancer, and throat cancer. And that is your friend, HPV. It is preventable. There is a vaccine. It is called Gardasil. It has been out for a long time. Depending on your age, it can be given in 2 doses or 3 doses. And it prevents the 9 most common strains of the HPV vaccine. Sometimes audiences will ask me, I'm scared of the HPV vaccine, it wasn't well studied, it was rushed to market. So that's not actually true. The Gardasil vaccine is the hepatitis B vaccine. There wasn't as much research done on Gardasil because they just used the shell of hepatitis B, took out the proteins of hepatitis B, plugged in the proteins of Gardasil, and you've got research going all the way back to the 1950s. Gardasil is safe and effective, and all of those cases of cancer could have been prevented by vaccinating your children.
Is it true that the new research shows that men with throat cancers, that it's now being discovered that it's HPV?
So it is extremely true, as listed in the last line of the slide, that HPV is linked to head and neck cancers, and the vaccine is most likely also effective in that. Gardasil isn't recommended for the prevention of that, but studies are ongoing. 100% true that throat, head, and neck cancers are often linked to HPV, and that's from oral sex. I'm going to hold your questions to the end. Write them down. I'm going to stay as late as you want on questions. I love the question and answer part, but let's do that after. Okay? I covered condom use. I just want to reemphasize that one more time. Condoms, life-saving. When I went to medical school was right at the height of HIV. And I lived in an apartment building in Dallas, right in Oak Lawn, right by the medical school. And while I went to medical school, half of my apartment complex died during my time. I remember these years. Condoms save lives. Are they perfect? No. Why are they not perfect? Because they don't cover everything. And skin-to-skin contact occurs. If you keep that in your head, then you understand STDs. All right. Most of you have elementary school kids, so I was going to do birth control pretty fast. I'm actually going to do it even faster than I thought, but it is important that you know these options for later on. If you are the mother or father of boys, you still should know this, and your sons should still know this. It's important that they're educated and they know these things. All right. Here's the background information on teen pregnancies. 870,000 between age 15 to 19. 3 out of 10 teenagers will be pregnant before they turn 20. Less than 20% were planned. That means 80% of teen pregnancies, their plan for their life was not to have a baby. Their plan was to play volleyball for Cross Timbers or to be in the debate club. They had other plans, and then this happened. And the United States has the highest rate of unplanned pregnancy of all industrialized countries in the world. So why does this happen? I have an entire hour-long lecture on literally just this slide, and really specifically the last 2 items. So I'm only going to give it a few seconds. But reason 1, 2, and 3 are information about birth control, bad information, lack of information, or a misunderstanding, and a lack of access. That's the majority of unplanned pregnancy right there. Number 1, 2, and 3. Unwanted intercourse accounts for about 7%. So about 7% of unplanned pregnancy in teenagers is from sexual violation and rape. That's not a small number. That 20% had a planned pregnancy, I find that group fascinating. And this is something I study in my career. The prevailing theories are that it's about achievement, fulfillment, and hope. And so we know that one of the best predictors for adolescents' delayed sexuality is involvement in other things. Kids that are involved in sports, band, music, it really doesn't matter what it is, but when they feel connected to the world beyond themselves, they tend to delay. And people that don't look for ways to fill the void. Birth control options. You got the IUD, the implant, the pill, the patch, the ring, and the shot. And we're going to do a few seconds on each one. The IUD, a little T, goes inside the uterus. There's one that lasts 3 years, a couple that last 5 years, and one that lasts 10 years. The ones I like the most contain a low amount of progesterone, so the only side effect is you either don't have periods or your periods are really, really light. It takes me about 5 seconds to put one in. You can place it, forget it. If you get it placed in 2019, you're a senior at Colleyville Heritage, call me when you graduate college. Then we need to talk about birth control again, but for the rest of this year and your entire 4 years of college, you have nothing to worry about. You are off the hook for birth control. Next one on is a little rod. It's placed on the inside of the arm. Very popular method in teenagers, just like that. It can stay up to 3 years. You get some changes in your menstrual cycle. That can be no periods, that could be spotting, or infrequent periods. It contains progesterone. Birth control pills, everyone knows that. A lot of misconceptions about the pill. Birth control pills actually improve your acne, decrease your cramping, lighten your periods, and it decreases the risk of ovarian, colon, and uterine cancer. The problem with the pill is what?
Take it every day.
You got to take it every day. So many times I will have you bring in your teenagers to see us, not for sex, but for bad periods and things like that. And you want them on the pill, and I will talk about how hard it is to remember, and you'll say, well, she'll remember. She's good. And so I'm going to tell you something about myself. So in 2009, I lost all this weight, and I decided I would be really healthy. And so I would take a multivitamin every day. And so I put it right next to my toothbrush, because what I tell my patients on birth control pills is put it by your toothbrush every night when you brush your teeth, you will remember, and you'll take your pill. I bought that bottle in 2009. I haven't finished the bottle yet. All right, the patch. The patch is a little patch. Goes on the skin. You wear it for a week at a time, 3 weeks a month. The 4th week, you don't wear it. That's when you have your period. Think of the patch as the birth control pill, but in a patch on your skin. NuvaRing, same thing. It's exactly like the pill, but in the form of a ring. It's placed inside the vagina. You leave it for 3 weeks. At the end of the 3rd week, you take it out for a week. You'll have your menstrual cycle. And the next week, you insert the next one. The depot shot, 1 shot every 3 months. A lot of athletes like this method because it basically stops their period in most people, and they don't have to mess with it. It is convenient and easy to do. This is one of the myths, though. I don't want to be on birth control because it causes weight gain. This is the one method where that is definitively true. The depot shot actually doesn't make you gain weight, it makes you hungry. If you're like me, normal, you eat when you're hungry. But it's not true that the depot makes you fat, it just makes you hungry. It stimulates your appetite, it's a side effect teenagers need to be, and anyone needs to know about. All right, let's cover Plan B really quick. Plan B is so misunderstood. This drives me crazy when politicians talk about it or news reporters talk about it because they don't even know what it is. Plan B is not the same as the abortion pill. The abortion pill is called RU486. It is in no way related to Plan B. They are not even in the same universe. Plan B is just a birth control pill. It's a high dose of progesterone. All it does is disrupt or delay ovulation. If you are already pregnant, it will do nothing because it's not an abortion pill. That's something else. Plan B must be used within 72 hours of unprotected sex, and it decreases the risk of pregnancy by 70%. That's not that good. Plan B is called Plan B. It is not Plan A. Okay? Plan B is when you got into a situation you didn't intend to, you didn't use condoms, you didn't birth control because you didn't think ahead. The next morning, you have an option in Plan B. It will decrease your risk. Okay? It is over the counter in Texas. Federal law says there's no age restriction. I can tell you from experience, in Texas, most pharmacies will let them buy it 17 and over. But it is available over the counter without a prescription. If you have questions about that, bring it back. One of the most common methods teenagers use is the pull-out method, coitus interruptus, the withdrawal method. As I like to call it, pull and pray. Okay? It has an annual failure rate of 20%. 20%. This is not a good plan. I am amazed in 2019 how many of my patients, not just teenagers, adults, they don't know this. So at least 25 people in Colleyville will now know. It can work for some couples who follow strict NFP guidelines. There's a church way that the church will teach you that. In the best case, you can cut the risk down to about 4%. In actual use, it's a 20% annual failure rate. Teenagers won't tell you they're using the withdrawal method. Here's how it comes out. So you had sex? Yes. Did you use condoms? Yes. Did you use condoms the entire time? Well, not really. We used it for a little while. We used it towards the end. Inconsistent condom use is the same as the withdrawal method. All right, here's one number I do want you to remember, especially if you are the parents of boys. 400 million sperm come out with every ejaculation. In pre-ejaculatory fluid, 4 million come out. Okay? How many does it take to make a baby? 1. Okay? Please remember that number and teach your sons that when they're age appropriate. Pre-ejaculatory fluid still has 4 million sperm on average. That is a lot. Questions about am I pregnant come up all the time. And I just want to cover really, really quick. Pregnancy tests are available at the store, and you can buy the cheap ones. When you come to the doctor's office and have a pregnancy test, we don't have anything special. We have cheap ones from the store. It's the same thing you can do at home. If you just follow the instructions in the package insert, it will tell you exactly how to do it and exactly how to read it. I have so many patients that come in and they bring their daughter in and they're, we did 17 pregnancy tests. They're all negative. Like, okay, good. I think it's got it covered. One was fine. Okay, one was okay. You can buy these and you can have it at the store. I will tell you, for those of you that have high school kids, this is a topic that gets discussed among high school kids a lot. I'm involved in an app called Health Tap, and if you're interested in online health information, it's maybe something you might want to write down and download. It's free. So Health Tap is a question and answer site where people can ask any health question they want, and doctors answer it for free. Multiple times a day, there will be a teenager somewhere around the world asking various versions of could I be pregnant if ... And the answer is yeah, so check a pregnancy test. Teenagers really don't know that you can just buy a test at the store and check one if you're concerned about it. And so this is something that needs to come up in the discussion. All right, now you're prepared. Now you have the basic info. Now everybody's 100% ready to have the talk with their kids tonight, right? Yeah. So you and your partner, you're going to sit together and you're going to map this out and you're going to plan, hey, I went to this lecture, there was this OBGYN doctor, he told us we needed to do this, what should we say? And you talk about it with your spouse, and then you sit down with your kids to have the talk. And so in your head, this is sort of how it's going to go. Beautiful picture, dad sitting with his daughters, and it's going to go like that. In reality, this is sort of what happens. So I promise you, it's not going to go according to plan. That's okay. You will make your way through it. I already covered this, but I just want to remind you. This is not a one-time thing. You don't sit down and have the talk, and then you're done, and it never comes up again. This is a conversation, and it's an ongoing conversation. And it's important as they age and as they mature, the conversation evolves and and changes. I'm going to walk you through that pathway a little bit. I once heard a speaker talking about adolescent sexuality. I absolutely loved the way she described it. So she talked about the discussion between parent and child about sexuality is think of yourself walking down a really long hallway with all of these curtains. And as you take a step forward, you pull back the curtain and you answer certain questions. And as they get older, you walk further down the hallway and you pull back the next curtain. And the next, and the next. And I thought that was such an awesome way of explaining it, so I stole it and now I put it in my book. But I really think that is a great way of thinking about this conversation. All right, important thing to do, number one. If you take it back to the earlier in the lecture where I talked about what influences their decisions about sex, I told you the parents were the number one influence, and you are. So tell them. Express your views. Tell your kids what your family believes, whatever that is. If your family believes no sex until marriage, great, communicate that. If your family believes no sex until you're in love, fine, that's okay, tell them that. If your family believes something totally different, they're your kids, not mine. So I'm not going to tell you what to say, but you should tell them. How many think that you just raise your hands kind of quietly so the camera can't see you. How many of you guys think that you've already told your kids exactly, here's what our family believes? How many feel like they've done a decent job with that? It's just for me to see, I just want to feel for it. Okay, good. For those of you brave enough to raise your hands, here's your next hard question. If I ask your kids, what does your family believe, could your kids tell me? It's a little harder. Many, many, many parents feel like they've communicated it very, very clear. But if I ask your kids, hey, what does the Carleo family believe about sexuality? The kids don't know. Something to think about. All right. We all want to do what works. We want to do this right. We want to do what works. So let's talk about a little bit about what works. Number one, you've got to cover morals and values. And that's something private for you and your family, and you get to decide that because you are the parents. And it's totally okay if some of us on this side of the room have different beliefs than some on the other side of the room. That's totally okay. Morals and values are absolutely important. You absolutely should cover it, but it's only half of the equation. The other half of the equation is health and science. When I showed you those statistics, if that made you uncomfortable and you didn't like it and you wish that I would stop talking and go away, you have to step back and reflect on that, because that wasn't my opinion. I just told you what's going on. I just told you the reality. If we're going to raise our kids, we have to raise our kids based on our family's morals and values, but based in the reality of the world that we all live in. And that's important to accept that. What else works? Engagement. Again, back to the idea, this is not a one-time conversation. This is not sitting down and reading a book, watching a YouTube video. This is an ongoing conversation, an ongoing dialogue. And I'm going to give you some tricks on engagement here in a minute. For the elementary kids and on, but especially elementary kids, be prepared to answer the question they ask. Okay? There's some evidence that kids ask questions that they're capable, when they're capable of understanding the answer. Even if you didn't really want to answer that question at that age, if they're asking, answer the question. Okay? Since I am an OB-GYN, you can imagine dinner conversation at my house is often very interesting. So my kids at a very young age ask me, how do you get the babies out? So when they were really young, the answer was simple. Sometimes when the baby's ready to be born, it sends a signal. And sometimes it comes out between their legs, and sometimes I make a cut and it comes out through their stomach. And that was the very, very young age answer. As they progressed older, I was able to explain in different language exactly what my job entailed. So answer the question that they asked. Okay, this is a hard one. Create an environment of openness. So, when your kid asks you something, so if your kid asks, Daddy, how do the babies get out? If you giggle, if you smile, if you laugh, if you hem, if you ha, if you cough, if you make an excuse to go to the bathroom really quick, you've communicated a lot to your child about sexual discussion. You've communicated that it's embarrassing, that it may be dangerous and scary, and so we want to be open, and it can be hard, but we want to create that environment. When they ask, you're open and you're ready to talk. I'm going to cover this last thing in a few minutes on backup plans, so we'll get back. All right, so think of this like a test that you have to study for. And the cool thing about talking to your kids about sex is you already know all the test questions. You can kind of make up the things that they're going to ask. So as a practice run, here's your first question. Where do babies come from? I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Tell yourself in your head what you would say to your kid if they ask you right this second. Ready, go. 30 seconds. I don't think you're really trying. I think you're just staring at me. If you really do it, what you'll find is there's stammering, there's stopping, there's lots of uhs, it's super awkward. All right. Would anybody like to stand up here and explain where babies come from to the entire group? I'm just kidding, I won't make it. As a homework assignment tonight, when you drive home, say it out loud. Okay, don't just think it, because your brain won't process that. When you drive home, your kid is sitting next to you, they say, where did babies come from? Say it out loud. You're going to be surprised how terrible it comes out. You can't get this right on the first try. You got to practice. You got to practice. Now, some of you are here with your spouse, but many of you I can tell are not. So when you get home tonight, ask your spouse this question: why do people have sex? Go! See if they can answer it. Okay? Same thing. It will be weird. It will be awkward. It's not going to sound right. Your kid will sense that. So think through, how would you answer that? Because one day they will ask. All the dads, what are you going to say when your daughter asks you this? Why do people get a period? What does it mean when you have your period? What do I do when I have a period? To the dads, do you even know what periods really are? But these are good. Prepare for that. What's puberty? Why is my body doing this? You want to be able to talk about that. And you don't want it to be scary, and you don't want it to be shameful. You want to be open. And the only way to do that is to practice. And I promise, if you try to do this on the drive home, out loud, you will understand what I'm talking about. All right. So that was sort of geared towards the younger age person. Let's make life way more complicated. So how do you talk to teenagers? How many of you have teenagers? Yeah, so they're hard, right? They're moody, they're super loving and hug you and nice, and then like they turn on you in 2 seconds. It's up and down. The hormones are going everywhere, and it can be really hard. But so important that we talk to them. Okay? And I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to talk to teenagers. Here's some of the kind of red flags, though, that I see patients of mine and their parents kind of overlook. So here's one. Watch out for the age discrepancy. So when your teenager is dating an older guy, I'm not saying it's always wrong. I'm not making statements like that, but it's a red flag to watch for. When I have a pregnant teenager, one of my first questions is, who's the father and how old are they? And so often it's an older guy. It turns out about 60% of teenagers that have sex for the first time are dating an older guy. Again, not condemning it, I'm just telling you it's a red flag. With your teenagers, encourage school and outside activities. Get them involved. When I have a teenager that's not pregnant and sexually active, I generally, before we talk about what they're doing in terms of their sexuality, I want to know what they're doing at school. Where do you go to school? What are you involved in? I learn so much about who they are and where their head's at by whether they're involved. Know the friends. The friends are the key to lots of information. Your child may not tell you things. The friends will tell you everything. So know their friends and watch them and learn which ones you trust and which ones you don't. Network with the parents. Okay, super key. and easy, especially in the world we live in where everybody's got a Facebook account. Get their phone numbers, text each other. Trust your children, but verify. Make sure when they're having a sleepover, I text Jennifer, Jennifer, are they staying at your house? Are you there? Do you know that? Trust, but verify. When you feel something, when the red flag is popping up and you just feel something, doesn't feel right, pay attention to the red flags. Your kids' grades, a sudden change in their grades, a sudden change in the way they're behaving in the family, a change in their lifestyle. They're starting to use drugs. You catch them smoking, they're drinking alcohol. You're hearing weird things about their friends. Those are red flags, and you need to pay attention to them, and you need to talk about it. All right. This is probably the hardest slide to do, but I like to cover it because I think it's really important. So, after tonight, all of you are going to be fired up to have your talk with your kids. And all of you will have listened that it's super important that you communicate your family's belief. And I believe that most of you will do some version of that. And you will make a statement like, our family says you should not have sex until ... Okay. This slide's tough to present to parents because it's going to make you think about things a little bit. When you say things like, I don't want you to have sex, or if you're going to have sex, use a condom, or if you're going to have sex, we need to be on birth control, or I don't want you to have sex until you're married, but if you do, come and tell me. Here's the slide. What this slide is going to show you is that what you think you're saying is not what they're hearing. Okay, awesome study. I love it. I've presented it 1,000 times. This study took a bunch of kids, and we asked them the question, would you say you had sex if, and then we posed various scenarios. When we used the term penile vaginal intercourse, 100% of teenagers said yes. If I had done that, yes, I had sex. All right, everybody good so far? We're all on board? All right. When we used anal intercourse as an option, though, only 80% said yes. That means 20% of people said no. If I ask you, did you have sex, and that's what you did, you could look me in the eye and say, no, I did not. When the issue was oral sex, only 40% said yes. 60% said no. When you told your kid, don't have sex till you get married, 60% found the loophole. When we talked about touching the genitals, only 16% said yes. Okay? I'm not advocating that any of these are right or wrong. I'm just communicating to you, when you make a statement like don't have sex until, or use a condom if, what you think you're saying and what they're hearing are very, very different. I will tell you, I grew up in a Christian home in Richardson, and I remember being at Young Life, and we were taught no sex until marriage. I remember serious debates around the age of 15 on where the line was. We didn't know about this study, but we talked about that. Where's the loophole? How far can you go? And we wondered about that. All right. As they go from young age to older age, it's really important that the way you communicate changes. When they're young, you tell them very specifically what to do, and your kids do what you say. As they get into that junior high age, though, things change. They are still very much influenced by what you say, but their actions are more determined by what they think, what they believe. So the family foundation is still super important. That's where everything starts. But as parents, we have to acknowledge that they're growing up and they're becoming independent. Remember my first slide said the parent's job is to teach your child to leave. Your teenager's job is to leave, is to pull away, is to be able to survive in the world on their own. Sometimes that makes us tense between the two of us. So we still communicate what we believe about sex, but now that they're getting older, it's really important to figure out what does your teenager believe about sex. It's less important what you told them, and more important, what do they think? Because ultimately their thoughts will guide their decisions. So you communicate often. frequently. Any opportunity you can get. It doesn't always have to be hardcore about STDs and birth control. It could be a moment that happened in a song, in a movie, in a TV show, an example of a healthy relationship, an example of an unhealthy relationship. And don't tell them what you saw. Ask them what they saw. Speak less, listen more when you're talking to teenagers. Ever feel this way with your teen? I do sometimes. So use opportunities in their context. So anybody seen the TV show Big Mouth? So it's really, it's sort of the Beavis and Butthead of 2019, so kind of inappropriate, super, yeah, very inappropriate, super popular with, junior high, high school boys. Really interesting. There was a group of 13-year-olds at my house. They're my unofficial pollsters. When they're over, I asked them lots of questions. I was fascinated how much they knew about birth control. Terrible information, but they actually knew what the methods were. When I asked them where they got it, they actually learned from this TV show, Big Mouth. I will admit, I have not watched it with them, but now I'm super curious to do it. And if I ever watch them with it, it will be torture for them because I will hit pause and ask them lots of questions. But my questions would be this. It would be, hey, she just made a joke about an IUD. What is that? Do you know what it is? How does it work? When would you use it? Who would use it? How would you use it? And I would look for opportunities in something they like and enjoy as an opportunity to lead into a discussion. Okay? Fuller House is another show that's on in my house a lot. I don't know if you ever watched it, and I'm not bad-mouthing the show, but there's a lot of like sexual innuendo jokes that my 9 and 10-year-olds don't get at all, but I do. And so there's opportunity there in just random TV shows where you can bring up subjects like this about relationships and have discussions with your child. Music is kids' language, and music is such a great opportunity when you're in the car and a song comes on, and the song is about falling in love with a boy or falling in love with a girl or who knows what. Turn the volume down and ask them a question about the song. Hey, what did that song mean? What did you think about it? What were your thoughts on that? Okay, they'll roll their eyes at you. The first version of the answer is going to be, I don't know. But don't stop at that. Ask them a follow-up question. Okay, so the communication tools. So this is something I think about in the office all the time. Because teenagers, they shut down and they don't talk to you real fast, and you need to break through to have good communication. Teenagers will also do things that are inflammatory, because they use that as a tool to make you go away. They know if they do this, mom and dad will just get frustrated and walk off. And then they can get out of the conversation. So they're using communication tools on you. You have to be smarter. So think about interaction versus reaction. Okay? And so if I'm having a conversation with a teenager in the office or with my own children, if they're frustrating me, I need to remember to not react to it and find a way to keep the interaction going. And I can often do that by just asking better questions. Has anybody ever heard of the 5 whys? Yeah? You know about it? Okay. Let's see. Rebecca, can I ask you a question? I won't embarrass you, I promise. Nothing embarrassing. Rebecca, why did you come tonight?
Moral support. And
Awesome. So I totally appreciate the moral support. But beyond the moral support, was there any other reason why you came?
Just interested in what you say in the office and kind of the latest statistics and things like that.
So there was some curiosity since your husband works with me. You wanted to put the stats to it and just sort of get a better feel for what we do. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, just if there's anything that I'm missing. I've
Yeah.
had these talks with my older girls and
So you have children?
just 3 girls.
3 girls? So why did you think maybe tonight would also help, not just give you more insight to what we do for a living, but to help you with your...
Yeah, especially with the youngest one. I think like kind of what is the best time, what's, like with the older 2, I felt like I had a better conversation with, but with the younger one, he just...
Okay, that's the 5 whys. Okay, so what happened there? I ask a simple question, why did she come? And when I ask a simple question, I got a simple answer. I came moral support for you. But it only took me 2 more questions to get to the real issue, was a mom with 3 children feels good about the first 2, but really struggling on what to do with the youngest, right? So we got just a couple of more questions, and we broke below the surface, and a little deeper, and a little deeper, and a little deeper. If you think about the 5 whys when talking to your teenagers, it's amazing. They'll notice after like 3 or 4. You won't always get to 5. But you always get to 2, because the first answer is always, I don't know. So reword it, restate it, let them answer. Then reword that, restate it, and go a little deeper. And it's fascinating. It's super fun. It's a game you can play in your own head talking to your children. Try to learn to respond with a question. So I think, we grow up with our little children. We're so much telling them. And with teenagers, what we need to be doing is teaching them to think. So try when you can, and an issue comes up, and you're feeling super frustrated, or you just don't know what to do, don't give the answer, ask another question. And that works so well with teenagers. When I remember to do this in the office, I always have better discussions, and I always find out something surprising that I wasn't expecting. This works amazing. I don't know how long I'll get away with it, but right now, it works amazing. It works in the office and it works at home. So children actually like to talk to adults if you're cool and normal and you treat them with respect. They like to. Your child a lot of times won't tell you specific things about difficult subjects. But if you ask your child about their friends, so generic questions, they will answer. Okay? So if I ask my children something about their sexual belief or their sexual activity, I'm not going to get an answer. But if I say something like to a high school kid, hey, are there girls at your school that are pregnant? They go, oh yeah. Well, what do you think about that? I don't know. Well, you say you don't know, but you walked around the school and you saw them. Did you have any thoughts about that? Nah, I don't know. Well, how do you think she feels? And so you can dig. And you start asking questions about general stuff, and they'll answer. When you get too close, that's when they'll throw up the wall real quick. And then that's okay, conversation over, you can try again another day. But talk about the school and friends, and they'll answer you. All right, really important, don't get so fixated on sex and marriage and birth control and condoms and STDs. But spend a lot of time talking about what is a healthy relationship and what's an unhealthy relationship. As I can tell you from 20 years now of doing this, it's not just teenagers. So many people, in my view, don't have a really good understanding of what a healthy relationship is even supposed to look like. So how do you talk about that? Well, you can talk about it in a TV show, in a movie. You can demonstrate it in the way that you interact with your partner. You might see something at a restaurant, you point it out. But the unhealthy things too. Is it okay for someone to tell you what to wear? What would you think if a boyfriend told you weren't allowed to play sports anymore? Theoretical questions, but really get into this idea of a healthy and an unhealthy relationship, because it's really, really missing. Parents of boys, and girls too, but parents of boys for sure, you've got to cover the issue of consent. No means no. That's it. There's nothing else. No means no. And you guys know through the politics of our world, some of our leaders don't understand that. Or there's question about it. If you're the parent of a boy, don't ever put yourself in that situation where there's ever a question. No means no. And body autonomy, it's for both. Nobody touches you if you don't want to, at any age. And we talk about private parts when they're little, but when we get into junior high and high school, what does it mean to be in control of your body? You get to decide. Nobody else. Nobody can pressure you. Nobody gets to tell you what to do. This is a powerful thing, to own it, and own your body and own that control. Really, really teach that with your sons and your daughters. If you don't know, here's what you say. I don't know. Let's find out together. Let's Google it. When you show vulnerability, you breed trust. It is powerful when you tell your child, I don't know. It's not a moment of weakness. They will respect you and trust you more because you said, I don't know. Let's go find out. Nothing wrong with that. If you don't know, say it. Safety net. All right, this is a tough one, but it's important. I'm going to switch to alcohol because it's easier for people to think about. Probably most of us agree we don't want our children to drink alcohol. We will say things like, it's illegal until you turn 21. I don't want you to do it. It gets you into all sorts of trouble. Do not drink. What reasons, reasons, reasons. Now, what's the sentence that comes after that we all say? But if you do. Right? We all do it. Don't drink. It is illegal. You can't do it. You can get hurt. Don't do it. But if you do, you call me. Do not drive. I will come pick you up. I will send Uber. Something. Safety net. Okay? Tough for parents to hear. You need the same thing about sex. Communicate your views. Don't have sex until you're married. Don't have sex till you're loved. Whatever your family believes, that's okay. But if you do, what's the plan? I can't tell you the right plan. But you and your spouse, your partner, you guys need to talk about it. What's the plan? I've seen different families do different things. Some of them, the plan is they've brought them in to meet me, and we've established a relationship, and we've agreed that if, in my case I only see females, if she's ever in trouble, she can contact me and come to an appointment without the parents' permission. Sometimes that's the safety net. There's different ones. We can talk about it later if you want to, but think through that. And think through if you're uncomfortable with that, think through why are you uncomfortable with that. And if you weren't uncomfortable about it with alcohol, why are you uncomfortable with the idea of a safety net about sex? Something to think about. All right. Monitor the internet. Okay, the internet is chaos. I'm a tech person. I love the internet. But I don't think I could have been functional with a wide open internet with no restrictions if I was 13 in 2019. It's too hard, there's too much. You've got to do something. I can't tell you exactly what to do, but free range total, it's just not, it's too much out there, too much temptation. The app I like is Bark. It is a notification system, but not spyware. For me, I was comfortable with that. Other people may feel differently, that's okay. Custodio is another one that's pretty good. I do think it crosses over into spyware and not just notifications. And when I was exploring these, what I really the conclusion I personally came to is I'm not spying on my children, I'm attempting to alter their behavior. And so I went through several of these. My wife can attest on our credit card. But I didn't like them. It took me a while to find one I was comfortable with. I like Bark. You got to change the settings on your home Wi-Fi. Okay, it can't just be open access. Whatever your family's comfortable with, but think about it. And then discuss the concept of internet privacy. So I am going to hit one issue pretty hard right now. Anybody see 13 Reasons Why? Yeah, it's a great show. It's a hard show to watch and very challenging to watch. But it's the story of sort of one viral nude photograph, unintentionally taken and unintentionally shared, that ultimately leads into suicide and all sorts of other horrible things. What I liked about the show, or what I don't want to say liked, what I think was powerful about the show is it's not that far from reality, because people don't understand the difference between public and private. And our kids live in a world where it's really easy to share, and it's hard to really keep things private. So I'm going to hit this a little bit more aggressively than some of the other stuff. But I think this is one of the most dangerous things going on in adolescent sexuality, and that's sexting. It is so common. And this is the idea of sending sexual messages or pictures. And statistically, from the Journal of Pediatrics, about 15% of teenagers sending, but about 25% have received it. The girls are worse than the boys on this, I'm telling you. I think it's scary. I think you've got to have conversations with them, not just about privacy, but the idea that all things get shared eventually. Nothing can be kept private. And it leads you back to body autonomy and consent and all of these other challenging issues. It's also a federal crime if they're 13 or under. So really, really, really scary but important topic that you all cover. Here are some apps I think you need to know. I am not an expert in this. These are just apps that I'm aware of and that I take a look at. Snapchat is sort of the main communication tool. It's also the main tool kids send these pictures. TikTok is a fun app, so there's nothing inherently wrong with these apps. TikTok's fun. You make a song and you lip sync to it. It's fun. But there's also a messaging system, and it's an easy access for adults to have conversations with your children if you're not monitoring it. So be aware of that. House Party, also nothing inherently wrong with that. It's like FaceTime, but in groups, so they can all log on, see each other's face, have conversation. That's fun. Nothing wrong with that. But you could also see where that could go, get you into trouble pretty quick if you're not monitoring. So Raha is really interesting. It's one I just learned about pretty recently. So this is an instant feedback app. So a healthy use might be, do you like my sweater? And I can send that out to all of my Instagram followers and get feedback really quick. You can imagine, though, teens using that as a manipulation tool, attention-seeking tool, and other ways through their social media channels. So an interesting one. Instagram is kind of like Snapchat. Now this one horrifies me, and I can tell you this from patient experience. For the life of me, I can't understand why a teenager would have Tinder. Tinder is a dating app for adults. Tinder's fine. If you're single and adult, you want to use Tinder, go for it. By all means do it. But teenagers download this. And they're swiping left at the cute guys and swiping right at the guys. And those guys can see that. So I mean, this is okay, not okay. I mean, this is something you really need to look at and look at your phone. All right. So we're kind of gravitating towards the end. So I'm going to kind of move us to the close, and we'll have about 15, 20 minutes if you have some questions and answers. And so I know I ended on sort of a sour note, so let me kind of take it back to a high note. After listening to me talk for about an hour, so some of you are probably concerned. You may be worried that perhaps you haven't done it right, or that you're doing it wrong, sort of like these people in the picture. Let you look at it for a second. So my answer to, are you doing it wrong? The answer is probably. And so am I. We all are. Because we're all parents. This is Max climbing up a park. You may recognize the park locally. But I think this is really where we all are as parents. We're watching our child navigate through these really, really difficult things, decisions about sex, decisions about sexuality. And our job is to be there and to provide guidance, but our job is not to climb for him or show him exactly how to do it, but we observe, and we watch him climb to the top, and we stay there off to the side to catch him if he falls. And I think I'm right there with you as we navigate through this together. If you're feeling like you don't know what to do, just keep doing it. Just keep trying, keep caring, keep loving them. This is ways to find me. So my company's called MacArthur Medical Center. This is our phone number. Our website is macarthurmc.com. We are super easy to find on Facebook. We do a lot of fun stuff on Facebook too. We also have a mom support group called MacArthur Moms, and so if you'd like to join that, you can just go to Facebook, click on our page, there's a button that says Join Group. The doctors, we actually stay out of that. That's all just parent-controlled support group, and it's really fun, and I look at it, I see tons and tons of great information, mainly about the young age, but the adolescent stuff comes up too. You guys were awesome. Thank you so much. Everybody was attentive. You were a really fun group. I really, really, really appreciate your time and your attention and for really just giving me the opportunity to come. So thank you so much, and I will open up to questions for a few minutes. And if you need to go, feel free. I won't be offended. I know it's 7:15. If you need to step out, that's okay. But I did want to, since I cut off the questions before, I'll move over here.
What
And if
was
there
that
are any, yeah.
first website that was, that keeps up with all the stats. Can you put that slide back?
YRBSS, Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance Survey. And they do it annually through the CDC.
CDC.
CD, Center for Disease Control, CDC.
Okay, .org.
Yes. .gov.
DACA.
.gov. That's what I did wrong. Okay.
Yes, Charles?
At what age should you or can you get HPV vaccine?
So the HPV vaccine is approved as young as 9 years old. Most pediatricians recommend at 11 is sort of the consensus on that. They can be given as young as 9. Insurance will cover it up to age 26. It was recently approved all the way up to 45. Your insurance companies likely have it, but the recommendation is up to age 45. Right around 11 is when most pediatricians do it.
Both boys and girls?
Boys and girls, thank you. I always, because I'm a gynecologist, I always answer about women, but thank you. Boys and girls, 9 to 26, pediatricians will recommend it at 11. Yes, ma'am.
So since that's become more of a regular thing, have there been, the
Gardasil.
have they noticed any increases? Or is it too early to see that?
Yeah, so most of the best data, and I'm going to get really nerdy, the best data about the HPV vaccine actually comes from Sweden. They have a public health system and a universal health system, and the data is tracked the best there, and in Sweden the data is really good. US data is kind of preliminary. Yeah, interestingly, for vaccination, you have to hit a certain percent of the population, then you have to track it over time. We're not there on that yet. Yeah. Jennifer.
So I have a quick statement and then a question. You did go over consent to talk to your kids about no means no, but I also want to just hit a point that's really important to talk to your kids about, and that is that if a girl is, I guess it's important to tell your boys, if a girl is under the influence of anything,
Totally.
she cannot consent,
Totally.
period.
Yeah.
And that's so important that I don't think the boys realize that.
Yeah, I think that is such a good point, and I think that transcends gender. People under the influence of substances can't consent, period.
And then
So great, thank you for that.
I'm having a little bit of a hard time of figuring out what age to talk to my youngest
Yeah.
about sex, because my older one was very mature and just figured everything out, and then we were like, oh, you know about, okay, well, let's talk about everything.
Yeah.
I mean, he just figured it,
Yeah.
deduced it from movies and whatnot. So my daughter already knows about having a period and that babies, where do they come out, all of that. But she did ask me the other day, well, how does the baby get in there? And we had earlier talked about when mom and dad love each other, it just happens, and that would, but now I'm like,
Yeah, so I'm going to broaden your question so that I'm not giving advice to one specific person. I'm going to broaden that into theory. There is no one answer for everybody. There's not. And no one knows your kid better than you do. So you're going to have the best answer for your child more than anything I'm going to say. I think my broad answer is it depends. If they're asking, then they're ready to know more. If they weren't satisfied with your first answer, it's time to go to the next level. And then you watch their response, and if they have a follow-up question, you go to the next level. And again, just remember that idea of walking down the hallway and pulling back the curtain step by step. Yeah, so it's...
She found out about Santa Claus like a month ago. I don't know if she's ready.
Yeah, no, so your first question about how babies got in there was man and woman love each other. So, I mean, you may expand that, but not quite get into full anatomic descriptions. There's plenty of ground in the middle, and they'll keep asking. I'm going to push back on one idea, which is that your son already figured everything out and didn't. I will tell you, no, he didn't, because no one has. I'm 20 years in this specialty and I still learn stuff. So, I mean, remember that concept that this is not a conversation with a start and a finish. It's an ongoing dialogue.
Right, I'm just super comfortable
Totally.
talking to him.
Yeah.
Because he's like very mature
I know him and
Yes.
I can agree to that. What else? Yep.
So kind of on the same question, she basically answers the question I had already. I know it depends on the child, but how do you know when it's time to start expressing your views?
Well, so again, let's go back to that concept of childbirth. Whether you know it or not, you already are. Because your kids are watching. They're watching every single move you make. Every time you greet your spouse or she greets you, they notice that. You are communicating that. I know your question is more directly, when do words come out of my mouth? I'm deliberately not answering that because I'm trying to pound home this idea that the communication happens whether you say any words or not. Now in your family, you'll decide for you when it's right to really specifically have, you know, in-depth word conversations. But you're communicating all the time, and you're teaching them all the time. Good or
So I will,
You're doing it already.
Yeah, I just realized that.
Let's do like maybe 2 more.
What grade in GCISD do they have the health class, or that they actually talk about? the
Yeah, so
anatomic-
puberty is in 6.
No, puberty,
You don't.
which is just growth and development. You know, this is how your body's gonna change, you're gonna get your period, that kind of thing. Nutrition, exercise, sleep. That is done in 4th grade girls and 5th grade boys and girls. And they're separate. Like, so boys go in this room and girls go in this room. And then 6th grade, the boys have another video. It's kind of like the girls are usually ready a little bit older and the boys are not as ready until then. So in 4th grade, the boys get the wash your pits and parts, put on clean underwear and socks kind of thing. And so 6th grade goes into a little bit more for boys. And then the other times would be health class. There is a 6th and 8th grade Aim for Success program that the district currently uses that goes into not necessarily the science and the health, but again, more of a goal setting of, looking at choices and making healthy choices, and that includes sexual health choices. And then health class, their TEKS, what the state says we need to cover is when those are all we're taught.
That's interesting. So in my head, I very much separate those 2 roles. So I think the school has a role and value, but then the parents, we have a different role and a different value. I think the reason certain committees get mad at each other, or a certain group of parents get mad on Facebook at each other, it's because you're trying to blend those 2 roles, and they really don't mix very well, because they have different strategies, different goals, and I think that's where it gets messy. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just, my daughter's still only in kindergarten,
Yeah,
and
you're-
so we're planning ahead.
Yeah.
The-
How awesome that you're already thinking about this stuff. It's
The
great.
questions certainly come up.
Yeah, kindergarten questions are gonna be answered.
And the thinking,
Yeah.
and so I just wanna, stay on top of the answering them as she asks them,
Yeah.
but also wanna plan ahead for when
I think that's
she's
awesome.
gonna get additional
I think you're doing
information from
great.
school or from classes. And
Was there one over on that side? Yeah.
I want to just say that I'm Hispanic, I grew up in a very strict Hispanic family, and I have still, at 46, not had the birds and the bees talk with my parents. So I have no idea where to start. I'm wondering if you have any literature. Is it wrong to use a book?
No.
Is it wrong? Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, so I'm not gonna
I just have no
endorse like a
idea.
specific product, but I'll tell you what I did with my son. 'Cause it kind of came out of nowhere. There were some jokes. I knew they didn't really understand what they were joking about. I knew it's either my time to explain it or somebody else was. So actually, I spent a little bit of time really on YouTube, because that was a form that he was familiar with already and liked. And I watched a few things to find one that I was comfortable with, and it was super easy to find. And there's very religious versions, there's very unreligious versions, there's very scientific versions. And so I think you just sort of experiment and figure out what's right for you. Nothing is better than your actual thoughts, though.
Okay.
So, do your homework tonight. As you're driving home, have the birds and the bees conversation with yourself that your mother never did. And practice it until it sort of comes out the way you want, and you will do a better job than YouTube.
Okay.
I'll give you an example of when I said use moments in their context. Everybody seen the movie Jumanji? Okay, so remember the boy, the female ends up in the man's body? there's a joke when they're going to urinate, and it's sort of a vague reference to erection. And so one of my kids said, "Daddy, why is everybody laughing?" And we were surrounded with a bunch of her friends. And so I turned and I said, "Hey, I'm glad you asked that." And I was thinking, no, I'm not. I said, "I'm really glad you asked that. I will answer that question when it's just you and me alone private." And she was fine with that. And so then when we were alone private, I looped back, said, "Hey, you asked me that question. Here's why it was funny." And then I explained it, and she, and it was okay. So it wasn't something I wanted to do in that moment, but the context was there, the opportunity was there. You fill the knowledge gap, don't let somebody else do it.
Did you tell her not to share?
I don't know if we got to it on just that simple thing. Yeah. Anybody else? I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something. I hope you found one thing you can take and apply, and I appreciate your attention.
Well, thank